It started as a faint tick after a cold start. By the third day, the tick turned into a hollow knock under light throttle. The oil light winked once at a stop sign, and then the engine quit with a bang. This is how mechanical mortality creeps up. I'll walk you through that progression step by step so you can catch the moment when a repairable tick becomes terminal knock and act before the final warning arrives. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. That faint tick that fades when you rev? Pros don't relax, they lean in. A soft tick that disappears with RPM can be an early stage of something worse because the engine's load profile, not just speed, decides whether the sound is harmless or a warning. Cold, thin oil and small clearances can hide a problem until the parts warm, expand, and the oil thins. That's why a veteran hears the pattern and watches your right foot. Start by sorting the common early sounds. Cold start lifter tick is sharp and high on the engine. It often fades as oil fills the lifters. Injector click is crisp, fast, and even on all cylinders. It keeps a steady tempo that tracks RPM cleanly. The first hint of rod knock shows up under light load, not at a free rev, and it has a dull, hollow edge that lingers after you lift. It's less a tap and more a muted thud that lives low in the block. Here's an easy test. In neutral, give a quick throttle blip and let it fall back to idle. Then put the engine under a steady, gentle load. Drive or hold a slight incline. Valve ticks often clean up as oil circulates and pressure stabilizes. A rod knock grows with load and hangs on, even when warm, because the force across the bearing rises with cylinder pressure. If it follows throttle and survives heat, it's not a friendly tick. Mechanically, the failure is simple. As bearing clearance increases, the pressurized oil film that should carry the crank gets interrupted. Instead of floating, the journal touches down. Each power stroke turns into a tiny hammer blow. The oil film is your parachute. Lose pressure, and you free fall on steel. Hot idle is the proof point. When you see single-digit oil pressure, you're in the danger zone on many engines and where accelerates fast. Frequency gives more clues. Big end rod knock tends to speak every other revolution, and it rides with load. Small end or wrist pin noises can be lighter and more rapid, tracking piston motion differently. The hollow knock at half-engine speed, low in the block, under load, is the signature that makes techs call it. Engines don't self-heal this. Once that film fails, each run adds clearance, heat, and damage. If the sound is your countdown, the oil light is the lender's final notice. So what breaks first inside? If the knock is the message, the sender lives in the oil circuit. Oil sits in the sump until the pickup draws it through a screened mouth. The pump pressurizes that flow and shoves it into galleries drilled through the block and crank. At each main and rod, the spinning journal drags oil into a wedge. That wedge lifts the journal off the bearing face at speed, carrying load on a thin, moving film. When it's healthy, you never hear it. When it's not, the sound writes itself in steel. The chain fails in simple ways. A sludged pickup starves the pump at hot idle when oil thins. A low level lets the pump gulp air on turns or stops. Overheated or diluted oil loses viscosity and can't hold pressure in the clearances. A worn pump leaks internally and bleeds volume. Any one of these steals the safety margin when the engine is hottest, slowest, and weakest on pressure. That is where the knock is born. Inside the bearings, the wear follows a pattern. The soft overlay wipes first, then the copper layer shows. Clearance grows. With more gap, oil squirts out faster than the pump can feed it, and pressure drops right where you need it most. Each combustion stroke drives the journal harder into the bearing, and the hit grows dull and hollow. Then the worst step lands. The shell loses its crush and rotates in the rod or cap. The oil feed hole no longer lines up. The journal now grinds dry against the cap, and the heat spikes in seconds. That's why the oil light is a late warning. It usually trips around 5 to 7 pounds per square inch. If it flickers hot, the protective film already failed in spots, and the engine has been running on the edge. In that state, the surfaces slide under boundary lubrication. Temperatures jump, microscopic welding and tear-off start, and the debris you drain looks like fine glitter because it is. From first audible knock to destruction, the clock runs fast. High heat, heavy load, and higher RPM slash the timeline to minutes or hours. Terminal signs show up together: a flicker at hot idle, lower hot pressure, and a knock that deepens with each heat cycle. Once you hear that combination, the crank's fate is set, but you still have a choice about the rest of the engine. The steps you take next decide whether the block survives. You don't need a lift or a lab. Start with the dipstick. Pull it cold, then again after a short warm idle. Note the level, but study the fluid. A burnt smell points to heat stress. Rub a drop between your fingers. Gritty specks or a gray sheen hint at bearing metal suspended in the oil. Wipe the blade on white paper and look for sparkle under light. If you just change the oil and it turns gray quickly, that's a sign of ongoing metal shedding, not an old mess. Next, verify hot idle oil pressure with a mechanical gauge. Bring the engine to full operating temperature and let it settle at its lowest idle. Read the number and compare it to the factory hot spec for your engine. If the gauge shows a significantly low value, you're seeing the effect of enlarged clearances bleeding pressure. That reading doesn't lie. Low pressure when hot is the red flag that the oil film can't reliably hold the crank off the bearings. Now map the sound. Use a mechanic's stethoscope or even a long screwdriver as a probe. Listen at the valve cover for sharp, high ticks. Then move to the lower block near the oil pan rails. A true rod knock transmits strongest low in the crankcase with a duller, hollow note that follows light throttle. Keep the engine at idle while you move the probe to avoid masking the source. Add a gentle load. With the car in drive and your foot firmly on the brake, nudge the throttle for a second or idle up a slight hill. If the noise swells under load and keeps a steady rhythm, it favors the bottom end. Valve train ticks often stay the same or fade as oil pressure rises with RPM. If you need one more proof, do a cylinder drop test. Briefly disable one cylinder at a time by unplugging an injector or coil. If the knock softens when a specific cylinder is cut, the load on that rod fell and the noise answered. Reconnect it and move on to the next. Timelines matter. Injector tick, drive, lifter tick, plan service, piston slap, monitor, rod knock, park now or tow. Some engines last 5 to 50 miles, others fail in minutes. If the oil light flickers when hot, shut it down and tow. Each second risks turning a fixable crank into scrap.